What's up, guys? Greg Ehrenberg from Stokastic here. We've got a new tool that I'm sure a lot of you are aware of on our site right now, our contest simulation tool. And the number one question that we've gotten since this came out is, how do you build your lineups? Do you upload into the Sims tool? I'm going to walk you through my process right now, as well as show off some of the features of the simulation tool. And hopefully, this is stuff that's going to help you guys make some money playing DFS. Now, if you want to get access to our Sims tool, there's a link below. You guys could use that link to go sign up for it. Also, if you could do me a favor while you're here, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Let's break down how I build my lineups in Fantasy Cruncher. And it really isn't all that difficult. But the number one thing that you have to understand while you're building out these lineups is you're not trying to build the best lineups imaginable to upload into the Sims tool. What you are looking to do in your lineup generator is build a set of lineups that closely mirrors what you think the field is going to be doing. The reason for that is because what the contest simulation tool is doing is it's simulating a contest where it is going to have however many lineups that you upload. If you're playing for a large field tournament, it'd be 2,000 lineups. That is the most you could upload. They're going to play against each other 40,000 times. And you want those lineups to mirror the field so that you're able to identify what some of the best spots on the slate are, what stacks are over-owned, what stacks are under-owned, what individual pitchers are looking like the best leverage plays. So for an example, I'm recording this on a Thursday night shortly after the June 15 slate locked, and the Braves were expected to be really popular. But let's say you're building your lineups and you're saying you think the Braves are too highly owned for an individual slate. And if you were to decide that you're only going to set 1% of Brave stacks in your set of lineups because you think they're too popular, what's going to happen when you upload your lineups into the sim tool is it's going to view the Braves as being way under-owned as a team because it's going to think that they're only 1% owned if they're showing up in 1% of your lineups. So what I'm trying to do when I build these lineups is build a set that really closely resembles the field. And I'm going to show you how I use the different tools at stokastic.com to build a set of lineups that closely resembles the field, at least as closely as I could possibly do it. So one thing to note here in Fantasy Cruncher is that you are going to start by choosing how many lineups you want to build. The options that are available in the lineup sim tool is you could go out and build 250 lineups. You could build 500, 1,000, 1,500, or 2,000. What you want to do is build the amount of lineups that closely resembles the field you're playing in. So if you're in a single entry contest that only has 480 entries or 500 entries, you want to build out 500 lineups. If you're playing in, say, the large relay throw over on DraftKings that has, 15,000, 17,000 entrants, then you want to be building with the maximum amount of lineups, 2,000. And that's how you should choose how many lineups you can build. By and large part, you're most frequently going to be building the 2,000 lineups to upload from Fantasy Cruncher into the simulation tool. And that's the first thing you're going to start with, is picking how many lineups you want to build. Now, in terms of what you are going to do to make your lineups resemble the field, the number one thing that you want to do once you're in here with ownership is try to set your exposure to match our projected ownership. So I also try to build this with a little bit of a buffer, because if you make it the exact same number, you're going to run into some sticking points sometimes where it gets too restrictive and Fantasy Cruncher isn't able to build out the 2,000 lineups. So I'll build a little bit of a buffer in here. For this set of lineups, I ended up adding 1.5x, or sorry, I should say 1.5% on top of the ownership percentage here. And that's what I did across the board here for every single player and their projected ownership. The easiest way to do this without having to hand input everything is you could actually go right into this tab right here that says actions. You could download it to a CSV, and then you could actually copy the ownership column right into the exposure column, and then just go right down the line and say like add plus 1.5%, and then you could just upload this right back into Fantasy Cruncher, and you'll see 17.4%, 25.6. It's the easiest way to get the exposure column to be relatively close to the ownership column, and that is what's going to be able to set you when you're building lineups to have exposures that are fairly close to the field. Now, there's another part of this that's pretty important too. When you're setting team stacks, I build my lineups 5-man stacks over on DraftKings. I use the top stacks tool over at stokastic.com, and I take the team's aggregate ownership, and then I paste that right into these team 5-man stack exposures. And then I also go in here and I add a little bit of a buffer. So like 0.02, 0.03% add on to that. So like if the Rockies are projected for 3.8% aggregate ownership as a team, I'll put in 4.1% here, just once again to give myself a little bit of a buffer so that when I'm building lineups in Fantasy Cruncher, it doesn't get stuck at all and doesn't run out of potential lineup combinations. So after we do that, I crunch the lineups out. I already have them built here. So for the purpose of this, I built 2,000 lineups, going to pretend that we're playing in a large field tournament like the relay throw over on DraftKings. And by the way, the same exact process also works for FanDuel. For FanDuel, I'm typically building 4-3 lineups, 4-man stack with a 3-man stack. Now, export these lineups. So after exporting the lineups, the next thing I'm going to do is I go over to our pre-contest simulator. You choose the file. Here's the crunch I just ran. File uploaded, verified successfully. Click Run Contest Simulation. And now this is going to take 30 to 60 seconds, and your lineups are all playing against each other right now. So I uploaded 2,000 lineups. They're going to be simulated against each other 40,000 times. And as the bar moves, once it gets to the end, I'm going to have a handful of information to show you guys that is going to help us determine which of the lineups of the 2,000 that we built are the ones we want to be playing in large field tournaments. And the thing that I'm going to be focusing the most on is the simulated ROI column, because when these lineups are playing against each other, what the simulated ROI column is going to show us is these are the lineups that are projected to be the most profitable of the lineups you have built. And it's based on a number of factors, including how often do the lineups cash, how often do the lineups win the contest, how often do they finish towards the top of the contest, because all of that stuff is things that are going to go into determining which lineups are actually the most profitable. It's more than just, which lineup cash the most, because if a lineup is just going to min cash, that's not nearly as valuable as a lineup that has a chance to finish more frequently at the top 10 of a field. So once your lineups are all finished simulating against each other, I'm always going to be sorting by the simulated ROI. That's this column all the way to the left. And it's also what defaults this to set to. So these are the lineups that we are projecting to be the best. And now, however many lineups you are playing in any contest, whether it's 20, 50, 100, 150, 300, you select that many. Now, if you're playing more than that, you could always go 20. And let's say you're playing 25, you could just click off 5 more lineups, and that would get you to the 25. For the purpose of this, I'm just going to select 150 so I can walk you guys through some of the stuff that's on the screen here. So all the different columns, this is the simulated ROI. This column right here is the projected fantasy points for the lineup. This is the total projected ownership of the lineup. This is the team that's being stacked in the lineup. This is the stack types. So it could be, a 5-man stack. It could be 5-3. It could be 4-4. This is the amount of times that the lineup actually won when all these lineups are being simulated against each other. This is the percentage of time it finished in the top 10. This is the percentage of time that it cashed. Meaning, so if this was, a large field GPP where, say, 18% of the lineups cash or something like that, this is the percentage of the time that this lineup would have finished in the money. Now we have those top 150 lineups selected, and now we have some information we can look at in terms of the lineups that we favorited here. They're included there, or you could look at our exposures. One thing I always like to look at is the stack exposure, and you can see here, these are the lineups in terms of the ones I selected, not in the totality of the lineups, but of my top 150 lineups, you'll see 25.3% were Braves stacks, 13.3% Twin stacks, 12.7% Guardians, 11.3% Tigers. So this is just an idea of these are the lineups and what percentage you have of each team. And then if you also unselect this, you can look at your exposures to the individual players. So you can see the pitcher exposures that you got here, if you want to sort by position, or just in total all of the players here. So the exposures, this is just the amount that each player is in each lineup. This is the amount of fantasy points we have them projected for. This is their projected ownership. And then this is the leverage. And the leverage is just the difference between the exposure and the projected ownership. So generally the idea is this: if you're trying to find your rooting interest for a slate, the players you are positively leveraged to, those are the guys you want to do well. The players you are negatively leveraged to, so in this build, I got to 3% about of Marcus Stroman. He's projected for nearly 30% ownership, so I'd be rooting against him for any given slate. But the thing that is going to be most important about this entire process is how you build your lineups in Fantasy Cruncher. And keep in mind, the idea here is not to build 2,000 of the best lineups that are projected to score the most fantasy points. What you want to be building is lineups that mirror the field. So when you upload them into our simulation tool, it's able to weed out the lineups that are expected to do well against what the rest of the field is doing. So I hope this has been helpful in terms of how I go about building my lineups to upload into the simulation tool. If you guys have any questions for me at all, you can hit me up on Twitter at Greg Ehrenberg DFS, or leave a question in the comments section here because there might be some common questions. I'll go in, I'll answer all of those, and that could be helpful in terms of you guys looking back on that, kind of like an FAQ. Other than that, guys, thank you very much for watching. If you haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and don't forget that if you're signing up for the Sims tour, if you have interest, use the link below. It'll take you right to the site, and it'll help you get signed up for that tool. Good luck.